All right, mic check. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Welcome everybody to the Death by Tyranny podcast. Recorded an episode last night and had some technical difficulties. My phone broke it up into 4 segments, and when I went to upload them to the Facebook, it pretty much broke my phone for about a half a day. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get that one uploaded or not. I will do my best to do so. There was a lot of good topics in there. I was going off in notes, so there was some pausing in between there that I didn't really care for. Be a lot better when I get some software where I can kind of cut and edit. But I do want to get some stuff out there while I can. I only have a budget for so much at a time. First and foremost, the Dave Chipman nominee for the director of the ATF vote was today. To no surprise, it was split down the aisle, 11 to 11. All the Republicans voted against and had very good reasons to do so. And the 11 Democrats just sucked Joe Biden's dick and said they wanted him because Joe Biden wanted David Chipman. I did listen to the whole voting for the nomination of Dave Chipman. And I listened to quite a few things on YouTube and browsing the internet today. And I haven't heard a good argument for gun control. I don't know if they just don't comprehend that criminals aren't going to follow laws, or if facts only matter when it works in their favor, which quite frankly, it hasn't worked in their favor. Through the whole pandemic, through the gun epidemic, through the 94 assault weapon ban. So we'll start off with the Dave Chipman thing. So with the vote being split down the aisle, what that means is they're going to have every single Democrat vote yes for David Chipman, for him to go on, for Kamala Harris to be the tiebreaker. So it's not over, but I think we've seen in politics and mainstream media how things are going to play out. I would love to be hopeful, but the fact that Dave Chipman has gotten this far in the process doesn't leave too much hope on the table. His nomination was pushed back twice. There's only rumors on why that would happen. I did hear that they were trying to track down or figure out what happened with a service weapon that he was issued while he was serving as an ATF agent. But quite frankly, if you have ever been standing on top of United States citizens' bodies after they've been burned alive, should disqualify you right there. It has also come out between Dave Chipman and his wife. They have donated pretty much my last year's salary. All right, we'll leave it at that. What I made in a year, they have donated to the anti-gun lobbies and the Democratic Party. So I wonder why Biden picked him on his merits or by his donation dollar. I will leave you guys to have your own opinions on that. And because they can't just hit us from one side, they had to hit us from another side because they were pretty much made to look like fools during this vote. So Biden comes out and says that there's a gun violence epidemic and that states with lax gun laws doesn't mean lower crime rates and vice versa. In fact, he stood up for Baltimore mayor saying that most of the firearms used in these crimes in Baltimore did not come from Baltimore. They came from out of state. Which I don't know if he realized, if that was the case, they were illegally brought into Baltimore. Somebody from Ohio can't sell a firearm to somebody in Baltimore. You would have to go through an FFL dealership to do a sell like that. And if that was the case, they would have been able to track every single person who bought every single firearm and where those firearms went. There is something like that exists now. Whether it's a registry or not, when you do a background check, there is documentary there saying that you bought that firearm, where you bought that firearm, when you bought that firearm, and if you passed a background check. So just because these firearms did not come from Baltimore doesn't mean that criminals from Baltimore didn't go out of state to meet other criminals and buy firearms illegally. And in no scenario there would more gun laws help, because they are clearly finding a workaround. It's called not following the fucking law. Now, if you flip his theory to the other side of the spectrum and say cities with less gun control, you can't say that their crime rates are higher. You can't say there are more murders. And in most cases, you can't say there's more homeless, more drug use. In fact, I'm sure there are some outliers, but for the majority of states, the lower the gun control is, the better the crime rate is. And to blame these states with low crime rates, low murder rates, and less gun control for the cities and states that have high gun control, high crime rates, and high murder rates is ridiculous. You still have people from these cities going out and breaking the law. It doesn't really matter where the firearm comes from, right? If it doesn't come from Ohio, guess where it's going to come from? It's going to come from Mexico. It'll come from Canada. It'll come from Michigan. You will not be able to stop criminals from breaking the law. It is just that simple. For as progressive as we are, and as progressive as the left claims to be, it blows me away that they can't grasp that single fact. And when they try to flip the facts on their head, they always use word games. I'll give you an example. The 94 assault weapon ban. For the most part, there was no great decrease in crime, and there was no great increase in crime. Therefore, when the time comes, right, you have the sunset clause, assault weapon ban goes away. If you have infringements that are being placed on the American people and it does nothing, it doesn't make sense to keep infringing. That's not what America's about. That's not what the Constitution is about. And that's what Joe Biden's trying to push now. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's coming. Dave Chipman is only one piece of the puzzle. And I would venture to say that he will be nominated to be the director of the ATF. He has already said under oath he doesn't care what the definition of an assault weapon is. He couldn't even state what his definition of an assault weapon was. What he did state is he would do whatever the Biden administration's bidding was. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of checks and balance to me. How many congressmen, how many comments, how many citizens have to speak up against the pistol brace rule that the ATF is opposing now? Or, I'm sorry, not opposing. They are proposing. This would be the second time, and they've already got their dicks knocked in the dirt and told to knock it off. But now we have probably the most anti-gun president we have ever had in the White House, other than Obama. And I would imagine if Biden was in his right mind, it would be even worse. If Trump was to come out and just say something and misspoke, it was blown out of proportion. He was telling people to inject bleach into their veins, right? Just an evil, evil man. But then Biden comes into office, and he is blatantly lying. And I don't believe it's the dementia kicking in, because he clearly wears an earpiece. And I don't believe it's that he doesn't have people that know what they're talking about. That's absurd to think that the President of the United States does not have experts in every field around him at any given moment. So when he says things like cities like Baltimore and Chicago, it's not their fault that they have high crime rates. It's the states with low crime rates, with less gun laws, that lead to the high crime rates in these inner cities. That just sounds utterly ridiculous. Moving on, he once again brings up the fact that you don't need a 30-round magazine to hunt deer. When has the Second Amendment ever been about hunting? It doesn't even have the word hunting anywhere in it. Then he goes to follow up that statement, pretty much saying that the U.S. government would destroy the civilian population of the United States with their assault weapons, which we can once again point to something that has already happened and call bullshit. We have been fighting a war in the Middle East for 25 years. Do you know what those terrorists have been fighting our soldiers with top-of-the-line equipment? Sometimes surpassing the greatest technology known at the time. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of night vision. More missiles than you could name. They're fighting them with AKs, rocks, And some could say, just with a little bit of get after it, I guess. So if a small terrorist organization can fight off the US government for 25 years, not to mention every other country they have fought off since almost the beginning of time, with little to nothing and some small arms, I do believe President Joe Biden isn't giving the American people the credit they deserve. There has to come a time where we have to make a hard stand. I'm not saying we all need to meet up and have an insurrection into a Capitol building or anything like that. We just have to say no. It took one lady that wouldn't sit in the back of the bus to spark a movement. It's always one person, that one martyr, that sparks a revolution. And if we've seen anything good come out of the BLM movement, we've seen that even a crackhead criminal breaking the law can end up dead and spark a revolution. So if Joe Biden keeps targeting the American people's gun rights, at some point, there is going to be someone who gets caught in the crossfires. And I believe that's what they want. They want the people and the ATF to turn as many people as they can into felons, because now they've made them criminals. And believe when the time comes that one of them become martyrs, they won't be held up like George Floyd was. They will be white supremacists, national terrorists, insurrectionists, and that's what they do. The Democrat Party is filled with nothing but hypocrites and evil people. There might be one or two that are trying to stay center left of the aisle. We did think Joe Manchin, I believe he's a senator out of Virginia. That's a big gun community. He knows he'll lose a lot of votes, saying he would not vote for nuking the filibuster. And as much as I would hate to thank a Democrat, that's probably the only reason we still have the filibuster in place. He's recently came out and said, even though he is against nuking the filibuster, he might be willing to accommodate some kind of filibuster reform, bringing that majority vote from 60 to 55, or even as low as 41. Well, if you're going to go that low, it's not really the majority vote, is it? 41 out of 100 is not a majority. Now, I'm sure the Democrat Party is making his life a living hell for the things that he has said and the things that he is stopping. But I tell you this, even being a Democrat and a Second Amendment strong state, he will keep getting elected, because that's what the people of Virginia want. Now, on the other end, you have Ohio, where I live, and we have Governor Mike DeWine. He's a Republican, has probably only served as long as he has because of that title, but he is very anti-gun. We are one of the only Republican-ran states that does not have constitutional carry. He was third only to follow California and New York to implement some of the strongest COVID lockdown measures. You can think what you want about COVID, but I seriously doubt some of those infringements saved lives. I don't know if we can win this battle with Joe Biden in office. And as old as he is, unfortunately, I think we should all pray for his survival for the next 3 years. Because Kamala Harris is the goddamn devil. The thing she did in California was just flat out against the law. You have Joe Biden that wrote the crime bill and helped write the 94 assault weapon ban and takes a lot of pride in saying that every chance he can get. And then you have Kamala Harris that put plenty of men that probably didn't deserve to be in prison, enforcing the crime bill and the 94 assault weapon ban. And then California took that and went further. If you haven't seen a California compliant rifle, look it up. The features on the rifle do not make that rifle safer. In fact, they make them less safe. The argument that a stabilizing brace would make an AR-15 pistol more accurate, that should be a good thing. Because if you would need to use it in a self-defense situation, right? You don't want to have to use those 30 rounds, right? The less shots fired, the better. The quicker that violent encounter can be over, it should be over. Now, California has taken the opposite of that and said, let's make these weapons that are made for self-defense and make them as hard to use as possible. You practically have to take the thing apart to reload it. Heaven forbid it jam. You can't get a good cheek weld. The safety should be on at all times until you're ready to fire. You almost have to completely manipulate the gun sideways, remove your grip to take the safety on and off on a California compliant rifle. That's not safe. It's not helping anybody, and it sure in the hell isn't saving any lives. For as little hope as I have against the fight against gun control in the next 3 years, I at least need somebody from the other side. Please tell me, what do you think specific gun control laws are doing to help save lives? They're not keeping guns out of criminals' hands. They're not making self-defense tools easier to use. They're doing the complete opposite. Nothing that you have passed and are pushing for is helping anybody. Except for the elite that will always have those assault weapons to protect themselves. The only people that will be disarmed are the middle and lower class. And then what? Have you seen what's going on in Canada lately? How would you like to be 2 years deep in a pandemic and know that you can be arrested for even pulling out of your driveway. They lost their firearms with the stroke of a pen. What Joe Biden is doing, lying in these press conferences, pushing this agenda, and putting anti-gun directors ahead of the ATF, that's pretty much the American workaround that's almost equivalent to a swipe of a pen. It has to stop. But it won't stop because you have people, for whatever reason, that wake up and go, my skin's color is such and such, so I have to vote Democrat. I'm LGBTQ, whatever the rest of the pronouns are, and I have to vote Democrat. And it's to the point where the Republican Party is saying, well, the Republicans aren't doing enough to fight against the Democrats. And the people voting Democrats are too stupid to realize that they're voting for things they don't even know anything about. They just know they're supposed to vote Democrat. But the Republicans, thinking a little bit further than that, are going, maybe we need a new party. I don't know if that's the answer or not. I would like to think more that the Democrats need a new party. The Democrats are no longer this progressive, equal rights leading group. They are fringe at the very least. They are pro-government. They are pro-socialism. They are pro-disarming the population. They are anti-free speech. They are big tech. They are big pharma. These are things that the Democrats used to be against. I don't think it's so much we need a new party for the Republicans because they're not doing enough. I think it's that Democrats need to wake up and realize that their party is no longer what they thought it was. You are now voting for a terrorist organization. You cannot be pro-LGBTQ and also be pro-China, pro-Pakistan. It doesn't work like that. If you were to go express who you are in Pakistan, they would throw you off the roof. If you were to be pro-Muslim and go to China, they would put you in concentration camps. Democrats really need to wake up and look themselves in their mirror and figure out if what they're marking on that ballot really shows who they are as people. Us as Republicans and conservatives, what we can do is we can contact our Republican senators and state representatives, and we have to tell them we got to find that backbone. We have to draw a line in the sand. And as harsh as that sounds, it has to be there because the Democrats have drew that line in the sand. And anything beyond their line in the sand is white nationalism, is white supremacy, is assault weapons. Where's our line in the sand? The gun community in a whole has to come together and put our differences aside. You have to stop telling the people that have come take it flags, well, if all you do is say come take it, are from my cold dead hands, you're not really doing a whole lot, are you? What are we supposed to do? We're voting Republican. A lot of us don't even think that voting counts anymore. A lot of us aren't complying with the bump stock bans, with the pistol brace bans soon to be in effect. A lot of us are informing our neighbors. A lot of us are calling our state representatives and our senators. A lot of us are leaving comments. We are doing everything we're supposed to do the right way, and we're still losing. We still have a president that is coming out and openly and knowingly lying to the American people. And it isn't a new tactic. Obama did this. You can walk into a gun show in Indiana, load up a truck full of guns, and take them right down to Chicago. Obama wasn't lying, but he wasn't telling the truth either. You can go to a gun show and buy a firearm legally, and by doing so, you will have to submit a NICS check. You will have to pass a background check. And if you're not from Indiana, you're going to have that gun shipped to an FFL in your state. That's how that works. Now, if a guy at the gun show comes up to you and says, hey, I won't make you pass a background check. I'll sell you a van full of guns. That's a crime. That is breaking the law. And that doesn't just happen at gun shows. Stop calling that a fucking gun show loophole. It is breaking the law. That is what that is. If your boyfriend's a felon and you go into a firearm store, gun store, whatever, you fill out a NICS check and you don't say that firearm is for you, you're going to get denied. And if you say it is for you, you pass the background check and you go outside and you give it to your boyfriend, which you know is a felon, that's called a straw purchase. And that's breaking the law too. I have yet to hear a good argument from the left or Democrats on how this gun control works. You have your background checks. I don't think anybody in the last 10 years or so have pushed back on that. More background checks isn't going to do it. You are more vulnerable in gun-free zones than you are in places that allow you to carry a concealed carry weapon. That is a fact. Mass shooters don't go to fucking gun ranges to commit mass shootings. They go to schools. They go to hospitals. They go to military bases where they can't carry personal firearms. They go to concerts where they get patted down and aren't allowed to carry in firearms. These are facts, people. Yes, I'm sure you can name one incident where some guy shot 2 or 3 people in a place where there could have been a CCW. That's called an outlier. Just like if we're considering mass shootings more than 3 people, middle-aged white males aren't the stereotype. It's just the only thing you hear in the news. There are gangs in Chicago, LA, Baltimore, New York where there's mass shootings every single night, in neighborhoods where there might not even be middle-aged white males. And most of those are carried out with handguns. So if you give up your AR-15, what makes you think they're not going to come after the firearm that commits 90% of these shootings? That doesn't even make any sense. We're going to make illegal the thing that only makes up 2% of shootings in America. And it's less than that because the 2% is all rifles. Not AR-15s, not AKs, but all rifles. 22 rifles, bolt action rifles, air rifles in some cases. There are too many holes in the Democrats' gun control theories that it blows my mind that it is 2021 and we are still having this conversation. You do not sound intelligent anymore. There is too much evidence. There is too much history. Too many big events that has followed populations being disarmed. Just stop the bullshit. I would rather you just come out and say, we no longer want middle class, strong, intelligent males to have firearms. Because if we want to do something and it is an infringement or goes against the Constitution, we don't want any kind of backlash or anyone to fight us on that. At least then they would be openly admitting what they are. Tyrants. But instead, they have brainwashed less than 50% of the population because I just refuse to